Welcome, everybody, to the NHL Weekly Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I'm your host for the NHL Weekly Show, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I want to welcome in our NHL beat writer and co-host, Sam Mcginnis. How you doing, Sam?
I'm doing good. How are you?
All right, and I want to bring up right now, if you have any questions during the show or for next week's show, just send us a direct message at Grueling Truth, and we will get to your questions. And I know we were a little late this week, but we do have a handful of questions from listeners that we will get to at the end of the show. And today we're going to talk about the state of each of the 32 teams at the NHL All-Star break headed into the second half, which just started Monday night. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to start by just breaking down the Western Conference, Sam. And when we look at the Western Conference, we got a bunch of teams log-jammed, I guess for lack of a better term, especially in sorry about that. So, when you look at this, Sam, in the Western Conference, what do you think's going on here? Because we've got basically probably the last four positions are still kind of wide open, especially the wild card spots. So, when we look at the West, what do you think just off the top? If we start Central Division, I think it's pretty obvious the St. Louis Blues are going to be in the playoffs. You got the Avs and the Stars, who I think are pretty safe. And from there on, though, is there any hope? And we'll start with the Nashville Predators, because that's a team I think a lot of people looked at as having a good shot to maybe make a deep run. And right now, they're sitting at the bottom of the Central.
Yeah, it's crazy because with all the talent they've had over the years, and even having now and going out and getting Matt Duchene, a lot of people were expecting them to be good this year. But the problem is they've essentially choked themselves to death over the past few years at the same time that they have received all this talent. We've mentioned this before. It started when they went to the Stanley Cup final. It has never been the same since, and they just keep choking it away until now. They can't even make the playoffs anymore because of how often it comes over them because they can't get that monkey off their back. They don't know how to fix it. And it's going to be very difficult for them to get anywhere with that on them.
So not much hope for the playoffs here this year, is there?
I wouldn't say so. Until they show some form that I can trust them, I wouldn't bet them being in the playoffs for a number of years.
All right, so if you're a Predators fan, remember Sam made the same comment about the Columbus Blue Jackets about a month ago.
I did. Of course, as we've said, too, that's the glory of the sport. No one would have said that about the St. Louis Blues either.
Most definitely. All right, let's look at the Minnesota Wild right now. They're 23-21 with 52 points. They're kind of in the same predicament, I think, as the Predators when it comes to making the playoffs this year. But I think it's a team that's kind of in a different position organizational-wise.
Yeah, they're in an eternal rebuild, and I'll tell you why. It's because a few years ago, 2012, they signed Zach Parise and Ryan Suter. They had huge contracts well into their 30s. I think it might go into their early 40s. I don't know exactly, but they're ridiculous contracts, and those contracts have kept them from being able to get the other pieces they need to move forward. So it's kind of like you got great talent for the price of making consistent playoff appearances or wins, for that matter. Well, it's just kind of handicapped them.
Don't you think that this is just one of those cases where a team was jumping on it trying to win now, and they ended up mortgaging their future?
Yeah, but there's the thing is, even if you try and win now with just a couple of great players and sign them like that, you're keeping yourself from getting the other players you even need to win now either. Like, they'll win games because they have a few good players, but they won't win playoff series consistently or make the playoffs consistently. They won't do any of the things they want to do because they sign these people for so much.
All right, so if we move on, we look at the Winnipeg Jets. This is a team I thought would be better than this, Sam.
Yeah, even AT&T knows just okay is not okay. They've really...
unless they're going to be a sponsor, don't be plugging them, all right?
Hey. But yeah, their offense, it's okay. Their defense, it's injured. The only piece I can say that's actually achieving the level that we thought it should or just should be, period, is the goaltending, and that's because of Connor Hellebuyck. He's having Vezina year. He should be in the top 3 when it comes down to it at the end of the year. But you can't have one man against the world. It doesn't work out.
Yeah, but when that one man is the goalie, it does give you a little bit of a shot.
It does, and that's why they have 54 points right now.
Yeah, they have 54 points, 25, 22, 4 overtime losses. I think they're probably dead in the water too, but this is a team with the goaltending. You never know if they get hot.
Well, yeah, again, if there was one piece you wanted to have above everything else, it would be the goaltending, so you have to at least keep an eye on them through the rest of the season.
All right, next
and
up,
if the defense does get better, because injuries, the injuries will stop, they'll get back to it. If they can get better, which is possible, they might be able to catch one of those Pacific teams. They're not too far back.
Now, how about this? What about the Chicago Blackhawks? They're sitting kind of in the same position as the Jets, but kind of in a different way.
Yeah, here's the difference is the Chicago Blackhawks still have a lot of pieces from their Stanley Cup winning days. The problem remains that they still haven't been able to produce even with those pieces still around. Like Patrick, they're still scoring. Their goaltending has been needing some help. The defense has also been rough. The problem is that they're trying to do the same things they were then, now, and it's not working out very well.
Well, how about this? They're only like 3 points out of a playoff spot, but the thing that would worry me here is to be able to get on a win streak, the goaltending and the defense, I think, is the main thing, and I think that they're a team that I have a hard time seeing going on a long winning streak of 5 or 6 games and really putting themselves back in play here.
Well, yeah, and even if they did those things, the likelihood of them staying up there is even less so. So
yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah,
Without the defensive consistency, you're usually not going to have a team consistency unless your offense is just off the hook.
Yeah, it's hard for me to see it, but I will say I think it's a bright future because they still have stars there.
Yeah, and if we look at the top 3 teams there, I think we can agree they're probably all 3 playoff teams. We're going to start off with the Dallas Stars, who made a little coaching change, and seems like they're playing much better recently.
Yes, I just watched them a couple nights ago when they were playing the Tampa Bay Lightning. They played very well. They won in overtime. They didn't give up, and their smart defense turns into good offense. It gives them breakaways, 2-on-1s. Their defense is really what produces that offense, and it's very interesting to watch. They play a lot of zone, and it's very effective. It's what keeps them in the game consistently, and their goaltending is always fantastic. The save percentage combined was .931 last time I looked. So between the two and having just enough offense to keep it up, they're doing very well. If there was one team that could pass the Blues, now I don't think anyone will, but if there was one team that could pass them right now, I would say it's the Stars.
I don't know that they got the offense to do that, though.
Well, that's why I was saying I don't think anybody will, but if the one team was going to, it would be the Stars.
Well, see, I think the Avalanche has the offense to catch and pass the Blues, but I don't think they have the defense. When we look at the Avalanche, what's your take there?
The Avalanche are a very good team, and this is the fun thing where we're going to see is the likelihood is that the Dallas Stars and Avalanche are going to meet in the playoffs. And I love this because you have two teams that are very good at overachieving. They do it almost every year in the playoffs that they come to is they're supposed to lose, but they don't. How will that play out when they play each other is the question. It's going to be very fun to watch.
Well, I think it's fun to watch because when you talk about teams like that, the common thread with teams like that is that they're mentally tough teams.
Oh, yeah, it'll be a physical series for sure. That's another thing that'll make it going. We saw this when the Blues and Stars played, both overachieving teams, and that went into double overtime of a Game 7. I would not be surprised to see the same thing here.
Well, how about this? We go to the top of the Central. Of course, it's the St. Louis Blues. And you talked about last year. Last year at this time, nobody would have ever thought they're going to make a run and win the Stanley Cup. The thing that's been impressive to me is that usually when you see teams like that that come out of nowhere, they kind of drop back in the pack the next year, and that's not been the case with the Blues.
Yeah, no, they're here to stay. I wrote an article about this a while back, right before they won the Stanley Cup, actually, when I predicted their 7-0 win over Boston. They're here to stay. Their core is going to be around for a while. Biddington is going to be around for a heck of a long time, and their coach has no reason to leave either. It's the same people. They're not leaving. You just saw what they became. They changed permanently. There's no going back now.
Yeah, I don't think they'd want to either. Will we look at the Pacific Division?
No.
The Vancouver Canucks lead with 60 points, followed by the Flames and the Oilers 58-57, the Coyotes 57, the Golden Knights 57, and then we go to the bottom three teams. And those trades, we're going to start off with the Los Angeles Kings, who are 18-27. This is a team not too long ago was really good. Is this a team that the way they're building this team will be good in the near future, or are there issues here?
I think they're still holding on to the past a little bit. They need to knock off some heads and make a new team. The glory days are gone. You need to build new ones, not try and live with the old ones. I would trade Jonathan Quick, would be a good start. He's rotting there because he doesn't have anything he needs to have success. Really, to move forward, they got to start by moving backwards, and they haven't done that enough to start moving forward yet.
Yeah, and we see that with a lot of teams in a lot of sports where they're successful and they are slow to pull the trigger. And I think that if you look to another sport like the NFL with Bill Belichick, the reason Bill Belichick's always been successful is he always got rid of guys a year before most people thought he should have, which, number one, gives him the chance to get the value from that player instead of waiting until it's too late.
Yeah, that's a smart strategy because it gets you ahead of the game.
All right, next up, the Anaheim Mighty Ducks.
I
call them the Mighty Ducks just because I like to, because I watched all those movies when I was much younger.
Yeah, the name needed help, but yeah,
I like the Mighty Ducks. It sounds better than just the Anaheim Ducks. I mean, it would be better to be a mighty duck than just a duck, wouldn't it, Sam?
Sorry, I can't take it seriously.
I can't just take Anaheim Ducks seriously that often, but go ahead.
No, the whole name, it would be okay if they changed it. That would be okay with me.
Yeah, like the Anaheim Warhawks. What do you think?
Anything is better than ducks.
All right, so, not that we give a duck, but what do you think about Anaheim and where they sit right now?
Oh, my goodness. I don't even think there's a good part of this team anymore. They're dying, and I don't see them coming back soon with how tight the Pacific is right now and how many good teams are in it. If they were in the Central, or more importantly, if they were in the Atlantic, I would see more of a shot in the future, but not right now.
All right, the San Jose Sharks. Oh, had a mighty have fallen, 22-25, 48 points. Is there any chance to pull this together? They're about 9-10 points out of a playoff spot. Any chance they could change this and right the ship?
You know, I met a Sharks fan once, and he mentioned to me how people would always say, "We'll do it next year. We'll do it next year." And he told me, you know what I realized? Next year never comes. And the thing that killed them off in the end was themselves. They choked playoff after playoff after playoff, just away, when they should have been Stanley Cup contenders or won it. I would have not been surprised to see them in this time have won 2 championships, and they've come up with nothing. And now losing their captain was just the death blow. Joe Pavelski now on the Stars. I think they're done. Their team is way too old, and they're going to have to start the rebuild now.
All right, next up, the Las Vegas Golden Knights, 25-20, 57 points. They're right on the verge of a possible playoff spot. Do they make it?
Yeah, I do not see them missing. And the reason is mostly because of the goaltending. Marc-Andre Fleury is a beast. The dude is probably the goalie of this past decade. He was ranked as such by the NHL. So with that kind of talent and continuing this year as we've seen week over week, with that kind of goaltending, I feel like it would be hard for me to believe them not making the playoffs. And although I'm not fully in support of their coach, I believe he's not a bad one either. So I think he'll get them there.
any shot at getting to the top in the Pacific? They're only 3 points out. There's 5 teams within 3 points of first.
I actually do believe they will get that top spot. I had them making that top spot at the beginning of the year. I do believe they can get there. It will be hard, but I do believe they will get there.
Now, do you think the Pacific will get all 5 spots?
I do. Some of those other teams, as we were talking about, they're okay, but they don't quite have enough for me to support
well, you
them
got the Blackhawks and
getting a wild card
are
spot.
both 3 points back. I think there's a chance one of them could get in, but when you look at the Blackhawks and Jets, I just don't think they're as good as those other 5 teams.
Well, yeah, and that even true. I'm just saying the consistency isn't there. You would have to have some sort of consistency, just like we were talking about when we were on the Central. You have to have consistency to make the playoffs and to win in the playoffs. They have zero consistency whatsoever. With that in mind, I have a hard time believing that they can make a playoff spot. It'll be close, but they won't.
Well, how about this? When I look at the West, I look at the Blackhawks and Jets. If they were to get in, I wouldn't give them much of a chance. But when I look at the Pacific, I could see any of those 5 teams getting hot and making a deep run in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
I would agree with one exception, the Edmonton Oilers. I don't trust their goaltending, and their team is literally 2 players, Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid. You can't win with 2 players.
Well, I'll tell you what, Sam, before you say stuff like that, you need to realize that Edmonton is one of the largest listening groups we have for the Grueling Truth Hockey Show.
Hey, I've talked to Edmonton fans time and time again, and they know this. It's not an offense to them, but their team does need more than just a couple of players carrying the rest of the team on their back. They need a full team.
Yeah. So you don't give the Oilers much of a shot. What about the Coyotes? Because that's a talented team. They made a move at the trade deadline, or not at the deadline, but when the trading started. What do you think about the Coyotes? They sit at 57 points also.
They would be my second choice for taking the division and getting deeper in the playoffs. I like them because they're goaltending, another Vezina goalie in Kemper. They've got good defense. Their offense isn't producing the way I'd like, but it can produce, and I think that's enough to say that they could go places.
All right, next up, we also have large listenership here, remember, and those people all loved you for saying that about the Edmonton Oilers, and that would be the Calgary Flames, Sam.
Yeah, the Calgary Flames. Another good team, and I like that they put in David Riddick this year instead of anybody else that they did last year. They had Mike Smith in last year. That was oof. But yeah, the goaltending is improved. The defense is improved. The offense has, oddly enough, gone significantly down, which has not been helpful for them.
You know, they've actually been outscored
a lot of these
by
teams
13 goals overall this year.
Yeah. The offense has been needing some help.
All right, next up, the leader in the Pacific Division, the Vancouver Canucks. I know you don't think that they can stay at number 1 because you said you thought the Golden Knights would get them. What's your take on Vancouver and their chances?
They're kind of the surprise kid on the block, and I like them because they were underrated at the beginning of the year, but they've got a lot of good young talent, and then they've also got good underrated goalie in Jacob Markstrom, although he was the replacement for Marc-Andre Fleury in the All-Star game. And we saw how he did in that very nicely. I think they could actually surprise some people and knock off some of these better teams that we've been talking about that have usually been the top spots for the Pacific. And I wouldn't say that they have Stanley Cup potential yet, but I would say they could make a deep run still.
All right, so we look at the Western Conference. Who's your pick to play in the Stanley Cup Finals?
If I had to pick out of the Western Conference, I'm actually doubling down and going St. Louis Blues.
Okay. I'm going to go a different way. I'm going to go with the Colorado Avalanche.
That's fair. Overachiever.
Are you talking about me or the Colorado Avalanche?
Yes.
All right. So I don't know whether to take offense to that, yes or not. But it's hard to win it 2 years in a row. I like Calgary on offense, and the defense isn't that bad. I mean, I'm going to go with Colorado just because everybody else is going to pick St. Louis. But remember this. last year, our first NHL show we did on Survive in Advance, who was the person before the NHL playoffs that picked the St. Louis Blues?
Halfway through the playoffs, you did.
It was not halfway. It was at the end of the first round.
Yeah, it was during the second round. You said that
it was
the team
before the second round. Yeah, the team that won between St. Louis and Dallas. Yeah, or something like that.
That was the second round.
I know, before the second round. I had to say it before the second round because I said whichever team wins that series.
It was while we were still in the middle of it. I think we had passed Game 3 at that point. Because Game 3 had been the night before, and I remember watching it.
Whatever. All I know is I was right. You picked, the Tampa Bay Lightning to win it all last year.
I don't remember who I had from the West, though.
No, I don't remember who you had either. I barely remember.
Oh, I had the Sharks. That's what it was.
Oh,
yeah, and they made it to the third round. They couldn't quite do it. I don't trust them anymore.
All right, so let's go over to the Atlantic Division, the Eastern Conference, where the Boston Bruins lead with a 7-point lead over the Tampa Bay Lightning. The Florida Panthers are at number 3. The Maple Leafs are number 4, and then it seems like pretty much everybody else. So we'll start with everybody else, and we'll start with a team near and dear to your heart, the Detroit Red Wings, who have won an amazing 12 games so far this year and have only been outscored 199 to 109.
Yeah, this is the moment you realize that you're not in the basement, you are the basement. The Detroit Red Wings are in full restart mode. The glory days are gone. We're starting over, and holy crap, I've seen some bad tanks, but this sucks.
I don't think it's a tank when you're just that bad. A tank is when you intentionally lose.
Yeah.
To intentionally lose, Sam, there has to be the possibility that you could win.
I mean, that's what the other 12 wins, I guess, were for.
Yeah, they're trying. They're just not any good. You know, they're like a guy with no legs in the 100-meter dash at the Olympics. It's not going to work out well no matter how much they try. They're just going to fall on their face.
I will say this, though. I don't trust this being for the next few years, but in a few years, I'm happy that we are tanking and we are in this division specifically because it is a weak one.
Once again, you're not tanking. You suck, Sam.
I do suck.
Not you personally, your team. Jeez.
Okay. It's top heavy, so if and when they come back, it'll be easier for them to grow in this division because it's a little easier. It'll give them a leg up, and I think they can with Steve Yzerman on board because he helped build the Lightning juggernaut that we have seen over the past few years.
That you always rip for failing in the clutch.
Yeah, that's why he left.
Okay. Next up, we have the Ottawa Senators. What's your take on the Senators? They're not very good either.
No, they're in an eternal rebuild, and I think until Eugene Melnyk is not the owner of that organization, he puts his hands on everything, kind of like Jerry Jones, and it makes it impossible to win.
All right, next up, the New York Yankees of the NHL, the Montreal Canadiens.
The Canadiens have a very similar story to the Winnipeg Jets, just a little worse. They're okay just enough to make you think they could be competitive, but just not good enough that they don't make the playoffs. I'm sure it's very frustrating for a lot of Montreal fans, but that's kind of the way it is right now. And after years and years of seeing that, I kind of have a hard time believing that'll change soon.
I just have a hard time believing that bad because, remember, I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and the Canadiens were always really good. And like I said...
They were good, right?
Yeah. I mean, you look at it, how many Stanley Cups have they won? Close to 30?
23.
Yeah, that's why I use the New York Yankee comparison. And I think it would help the NHL if a team was to get back to the Stanley Cup Finals and it was the Montreal Canadiens from Canada.
I think it would just help if it was a Canadian team.
I think
period.
It would help
because a lot of Canadians don't like Montreal fans for being obnoxious, although some are not. But I think for the rest of them, they would just be happy if it was just like anybody, because the Canadians have not had a Stanley Cup winning team since the 90s, I believe. So
was the last time they won it when
hockey.
they beat Gretzky and the Kings in '93?
That might have been it.
All right, next up, the Buffalo Sabres. 22-21, 51 points, but almost 9 points out. I think they're dead in the water, but this is a talented team, and you never know.
I think they could. If there was out of these mediocre teams that are right in the middle, I would give them a shot to be closer than the rest, I think, on that list. Because they do have talent. They're not there yet, but in a couple years, they could be a formidable opponent.
Yeah, but they're sitting 9 points back, 4.5 games basically, and right below the Toronto Maple Leafs. Will the Maple Leafs make the playoffs? I mean, they're sitting at 59 points right now.
I think they will pass the Panthers, and for one reason only. The Panthers have pucks go in all nets, theirs included. They have no defense. Bob has been terrible in goal because they haven't had any defense. Now, their offense is number one in the league, but without a defense and without goaltending, the consistency won't be there. So they'll drop off here at some point, and I think the team that is just consistent enough and has the talent to just pop right above them would be the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Well, my only thing here is this, though. They've given up almost the exact same amount of goals and scored almost the exact same amount of goals.
Does that spell playoff success or playoff appearance to you?
No, I mean,
again, we were talking about mediocre.
Compared to the Maple Leafs. I mean, it's not mediocre to throw in 183 goals because the Boston Bruins have only got 169. Now, the Bruins have given up 30 less goals, but my comparison here is the Maple Leafs and the Panthers. Because when you look at them, the goals against, the Panthers 163 to Maple Leafs 167. Goals scored, Panthers 183, Maple Leafs 181.
Yeah, but let's compare each category that they have. Offense is the one thing I can say that the Panthers are better at. Defense, and this is hard to believe, but the Maple Leafs defense is actually better. Their goaltending, Frederik Andersen, is a million times better than Bobrovsky right now. And if I ever had to trust a team with goaltending versus without goaltending, you got to take the team with goaltending.
All right. I'm just trying to make you think a little bit. Next up, the Tampa Bay Lightning. They're at 63 points. Have played much better lately, 7 wins in their last 10 games. The Boston Bruins went through a little dry spot. Now they're 5-3-2 over their last 10 games. Can the Lightning catch the Bruins?
They can, but the reason I don't think they will is this alone. It's not that they're necessarily better or worse than the Bruins, but when the Bruins lose, it's overtime losses. Look at the overtime losses the Bruins have had versus the Lightning have had.
Yeah, they've got
exactly.
12. The Lightning have 5. That's the 7-point difference here.
Exactly. So it has nothing to do with getting the number of wins. They both have the same number of wins. It's about when they lose, they still get points, and that's what keeps them ahead of the game. So it's not necessarily that one team is better than the other. It's just one team can hold on a little longer.
So I'm assuming you think the Bruins are going to stay at number 1. I agree with you because of that 7-point lead, because I think we've already seen the Bruins in their bad stretch, and I think this team is so talented, you're not going to get too many more losing streaks.
Yeah, I would not be surprised to see the Bruins go 500 or above for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they probably will. Next, let's check out the Metropolitan Division, where we get the Capitals at 73 points. Penguins at 67, Islanders at 63, Blue Jackets at 62, Hurricanes 61, Flyers 60, and then we've got the Rangers and the Devils. And we're going to start off talking New Jersey Devils. What's your take on the Devils, Sam?
This one is weird because this was supposed to be like the Devils' year to come back and prove that I think it was 2018 wasn't a fluke when they made the playoffs, and they just kind of fell face first onto the ice. PK Subban has turned from a great defenseman and power play quarterback to just, oh my goodness, it's been bad. And then you have Jack Hughes, who has not been the first rounder. They were hoping he would be out of the draft. Just all the pieces that could have gone right to make them a contender, every single one of them have gone wrong. A bit of stroke of bad luck, but they might have to restart this rebuild entirely to get it going again.
All right, next up we got the Rangers, who I think have already started their rebuild. They're 23-21. They're no threat, I don't think, to make the playoffs this year, but I think the Rangers are definitely headed in the right direction.
Absolutely. See, here's the difference between the Devils and the Rangers is one is at least moving towards that playoff success. It might not be this year, but they got Artemi Panarin. They've got good draft picks. They still have Henrik Lundqvist. I don't know if he'll be remaining, though, but even besides him, they still have two good younger goaltenders who can carry them over the next few years. I think because they're also going to get probably a good draft pick coming this season, they could make some noise in a year or two.
Yeah, I think they'll be a playoff team next year. Next up, we got
that's harder for me to believe because of the division, though. You know what I'm saying? It's a hard
Don't interrupt me. I can have an opinion once on a show, Sam. All right, next up. Plus, I'm a Rangers fan and a Blue Jackets fan. So I've just recently become a Blue Jackets fan because I keep watching their games because I can't get Ranger games here. I could, but I had to pay like $100 or $200 for it. My wife will not allow that. Next up, the Philadelphia Flyers have 60 points. Right now, they are on the outside looking in at the playoffs. Do they catch the Hurricanes or the Blue Jackets?
I think they could, and I think they will. And it's because they beat great teams. In one stretch, they beat the Blues, the Lightning, and the Capitals. They are the upset kings, if you will. And if there was one team out of those bottom three that we mentioned, they would easily be the team I would have picked past one of them.
All right. Next, we get the Carolina Hurricanes, which is, I think, a team a lot of people expected a lot more from. But right now, they'd be the last team in the playoffs. They're behind the Blue Jackets now, too, by a point. What's your take on the Hurricanes? Will they hold this off? And if they do get in the playoffs, can they make a run?
Yeah, here's the thing about the Hurricanes. They are suffering from a very tough division because they're a good team. It's just good versus great. They're in an unfortunate state at which three of the top teams are all great teams, like not just good, and then the one above them is really good. They're stuck at this place where they're a good team and in most cases would make the playoffs, but because of their division, they just might not.
Well, see,
I think
the other thing is this, and real quick, not to interrupt, but I am because I thought you put a period on the end of your sentence. But when you look at the overtime losses again, that's a lot of the difference in between the Canes being fifth in this division and being higher because you've got 3 overtime loss points for the Hurricanes. Jackets have 8. The Islanders have 5. The Penguins have 5. The Capitals have 5. So that's like a 2 to 5 point difference between them and everybody else here.
Yes, that. And note this, the team that is directly above them, the Columbus Blue Jackets, they have not beaten this season. So when it counts to win in the division, they don't, which is huge. You need to be able to win in division, too, not just outside of it. In fact, it's the most important to win then. So to really secure a playoff spot, they're going to have to pick it up within their division and those overtime losses.
All right, next up, the Columbus Blue Jackets, who right now would be ahead of the Hurricanes in the playoffs. They are at 62 points. They've won 8 out of their last 10 games, 8-2. They are playing as good, if not better, than just about anybody else in this division right now. Sam, does this hold up?
I think it will because this is what coaches love, is this whole team is next man up. They've had an incredible number of injuries over the past few weeks and months. But every time they had an injury, it was quite astonishing because when they had that injury, they would win more. And as they're getting guys back, they're winning even more than they were after those people got injured. So they turned into a momentum machine of nothing will stop us, and the next man will be as good as the last man and better. And everybody will do their part and will work hard. And that's what really propelled them to this point.
All right, the next up we get the New York Islanders, which unquestionably there's enough defense there. Will they have enough offense to make a run when it comes playoff time?
I think they will. They're a good enough team and coached well enough by Barry Trotz to be exceptional. It's harder to see now with the Penguins really taking a lot of the news time away from them as they pass them. But if there was one team that was going to knock off the Penguins or knock off a big team, as we have seen last year, as they absolutely obliterated the Penguins, it would be the Islanders. They're coached well, their defense is good, and that's how the saying goes, is defense wins championships.
Yeah, you look at the Penguins, they are at 67 points. Can they catch the Capitals?
I don't think anybody's going to catch the Capitals, but I don't really think it matters because it all comes down to what you do in the playoffs.
Yeah, and they won the Stanley Cup Finals 2 years ago, so get off of them.
I know. Last year, losing to the Canes, you lost to the Canes.
Yeah, but how many teams repeat? I mean, most teams that win the Stanley Cup Finals.
I wasn't even expecting a repeat.
Fall off.
I wasn't even expecting that. But to lose being so high, being given everything you can to succeed, and then immediately falling out of the gate is kind of embarrassing. And I think they could, but you don't know. There's a lot less certainty when it comes to the Capitals.
All right, Sam. Who is your Eastern Conference representative for the Stanley Cup Finals?
Pittsburgh Penguins. As much as it hurts me to say that, I think Tristan Jarry will help lead them there. I think their defense is good. Their offense is fantastic. There's nothing not to like when it comes to Stanley Cup contender. They have former Stanley Cup winners who can help them have the mental toughness to get there. They have the recipe to do it.
All right. I'm going to go with the New York Islanders.
That's the thing, is it'll either be cup or bust for one of those two teams, because that would be my second pick right there.
Well, I just like the Islanders
teams have the recipe to do it. But
the thing with the Islanders is defense travels. Defense keeps you in all those games. I don't really feel great about saying Islanders, but everybody's going to say Bruins. And I don't want to say Bruins if everybody else is. It gets boring. So I'm going to go Islanders against the Avalanche, with the Avalanche to win the Stanley Cup.
That'd be a good matchup right there.
Well, that's why I picked it.
All
right. Real quick, we have questions to get to, but before we do that, give us the top five. Sam Mcginnis' top five coming out of the All-Star break.
Number one, easily Washington Capitals. They're ahead of everyone in points by at least, I think the closest team is a game and a half behind them. They're doing exceptionally in all facets of the game. Nothing to complain about.
All right. Next.
Number two, I would have to have the Blues. We were talking about this as my pick. They're the same team they were in the playoffs. Exceptional, very similar. Defense is good. Offense is good. Biddington is being Biddington. And I would still like to see that Justin Bieber shootout that he had to challenge for. He said it was coming. And I'd be curious to see how that one goes.
Nobody wants to see that. Next, number three.
I just think it'd be funny to see Justin Bieber cry when he can't get a puck in the net.
I just don't want to see Justin Bieber, but go ahead. Number three.
Number three, I have the Pittsburgh Penguins. Main reason for this is Tristan Jarry. Great goaltender who's being kind of a Jordan Binnington in his own right. So with them leading the way, and with the wins they've had and passing great teams, it's hard not to put them higher on the list.
All right, number four.
Number four, I have the Boston Bruins. They've owned their division since day one. They're dominating just about everybody, and when they do lose, as we talked about, it's overtime losses. They're incredibly hard to beat within regulation, and always a Stanley Cup contender.
All right, number five.
Number five, the Tampa Bay Lightning. Behind them, similar story, but they can't get the overtime losses. It's just that's what's keeping them back. It's going to become a question of what they can do in the playoffs, though. They might be this high in the regular season, but it's hard to gauge them until we get to that point because of what we saw last year.
All right, you ready for a little viewer mailbag?
All right.
All right, here we go. This is from J.R. Ringer, 1974, on Twitter. He goes, who do you think will be the first player traded before the 2020 NHL trade deadline?
Ooh. I'm going to go out on a wing, and I'm going to say Mike Smith. I know it's a little unexpected, but I think they're going to want to get a bit more. The Edmonton Oilers are going to want to get more offensive production, and I think they're going to trade Mike Smith to do it.
All right. I got one for you, and I'll probably screw his name up. Jean-Gabriel Pageau. Did I get that right?
Just don't worry about it.
For the Ottawa Senators. But I think the Penguins, Blue Jackets, Islanders, and Stars all could be in the mix. I think the Blue Jackets are going to be the Blue Jackets are going to be hurt because they don't have a second or third round pick in the 2020 draft. And the Islanders, though, have all their picks in the first 3 rounds. I think they've got an aggressive GM. So I think they're in a strong position to possibly make a run at him. All right, I think we kind of addressed this, but this is from New York Pokemon, who says the Pacific Division is very log-jammed right now with the top 5 teams separated by 3 points. Who wins the division? I think we've already went through that. But the big question is, will all 5 teams make the playoffs? I think we've already answered that too, that we both think they will, Sam.
Yeah, it's harder for me to see with the inconsistency of the other 2 teams in the Central, the Blackhawks and the Winnipeg Jets. But don't keep an eye on it because it can change. I would not be too surprised to see that.
All right, Tweetin' John on Twitter says, what's your general feeling of where the Rangers are in this rebuild? Both how you view it and how the organization views it. They've got a goalie logjam, lots of D in the pipeline, contracts to sort out. Do the Rangers do a full sell, or will they hang tight with this team?
I think they should and will hang tight. I know it's a lot of mess, but I think it's an organized one. I think this is the rebuild that'll get them back up there. As we talked about, they're in a good place. And I know it's a goalie logjam, but none of them are bad goalies. Even if they were to just pick 1 or 2 and trade the other one, they'd still get good value for Henrik Lundqvist right now. There's a lot that can go right with this, a lot more than can go wrong. And they're moving in the right direction consistently and going to get another pick. So I actually think that they'll, in a couple years, be contenders for the playoffs again.
All right. This is from Fire City 27. Which teams within the Metropolitan Division do you see as the last in and the first out of the Stanley Cup playoff race?
First out would be, if you were going to talk about actually getting in and not just winning within the playoffs, the first out, I would say, are the Carolina Hurricanes. Again, good, not great. Unfortunately for them, you have to be great in the Metropolitan to get in. And the first one in to pass them would be the Philadelphia Flyers because of their ability to beat great teams.
I don't know. I think I would kind of rule the Flyers out just because of how bad they've been on the road. I think the record I saw was like 10-14-1 or 10-13-2 away from the Wells Fargo Center. They've got 16 games remaining against opponents who have a combined 164, 99, and 36 home record, including 2 each against the Capitals, the Lightning, and the Rangers, 1 each against the Penguins, Islanders, Panthers, Blue Jackets, and Stars. So I think road games are going to be what kind of put a crimp in the Flyers' style here at the end of the season.
But here's the thing. Look at the teams they have beaten on the road. A lot of those teams you mentioned were great. They've beaten the Capitals on the road. They've beaten the Blues on the road. Like they can beat good teams wherever they are. The funny part is they actually have more problems with worse teams.
Yeah, but they still have a losing record away from home.
They do.
Okay. All right, Sam, anything else we want to talk about before we wrap it up?
No, that was good and good questions.
All right, and I want to remind everybody, if you have any questions next week, are we doing the same, or the show at the same bat time and bat place next week?
I have no idea because I have no idea what my next week's schedule
Just
looks like
follow
because
us
I've
on
been
Twitter.
prepping for the weekend.
We'll have you an answer. We'll have you an answer by Sunday night of when the next one is, but you can go ahead and send your questions to the Grueling Truth at Grueling Truth on Twitter. Either direct message it or just tweet to us. Either way, Sam, you want to tell everybody where they can tweet to you?
Yeah, you can find me at Samuel McG22. Same thing with Instagram and Facebook.
All right. Make sure you go follow Samuel G on Twitter. And you can follow me at Grueling Truth. But for now, we're going to go ahead and we're going to wrap the show up. I want to remind everybody, the NFL show tomorrow, we will focus on the Kansas City Chiefs, how their team was built. You can go check out the 49er build, or how they built their team, that we did today with me, Sam Teets, Anthony Servino. And Friday.
That was a good show. Sorry, I was just listening to it when you guys were on there. That was good.
I was amazing, don't you think?
I think everybody had good things to say, actually.
Yeah, but I was the best, don't you think, Sam?
Don't get too big.
Come on, Sam. I can mute you, Sam. But all right, yeah, Anthony had a bad show. I think I pretty much owned him today, don't you?
I think Sam Teets was good though.
Yeah,
that is who was on you.
Yeah, he wasn't on me. He's usually agreeing with me because he's smart.
He sounded smart.
Yeah, because he usually agrees with me. All right, and then Friday we'll have our Super Bowl preview show at 1:00 with CBS sports analyst Randy Cross, who also, of course, was the starting center on 3 World Championship teams in the 1980s with the San Francisco 49ers. So make sure you check that out at 1:00 on Friday. But for now, this has been Mike Goodpaster. That's Sam Mcginnis. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.